following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
You're listening to Better Live Than Dead.
I believe it's a big challenge for our building to keep things in perspective and to, if we're going to get addicted to anything, let's get addicted to the process.
And with that, we welcome you to Trust, the podcast powered by Better Live Than Dead and the Gear Radio Network. Episode number 46. This is week 2. Buffalo Bills at the New York Giants. I am Ryan Wolfe at WolfeBLTD, joined on the IndyCar Media Hotline by the man himself, Reid, who also happens to be at Reid on Twitter. How you doing, buddy?
Fantastic, 2-0. I am loving it season so far.
I'm glad to have you back on the podcast too, man. It's been a few minutes.
I am glad that you had. I always enjoy the conversations with you. It's definitely something I look forward to.
And I was going to say, too, if it sounds like Dell is short of breath, he is on a brisk walk to the bank right now. So we caught him at a good time to be on the podcast. And I just want to let you know, too, before we jump in, everybody, you can hear us on BetterLiveThanDead.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you can listen to podcasts, you can get this podcast. Now, with that being said, Dell, you did mention it. I'll recap over it real quick. The Buffalo Bills, they handle the New York Giants 28-14 and complete the season-opening Meadowlands sweep. Now, it's the first time in franchise history that Buffalo has started the season 2-0 on the road, and the first NFL team since the 2006 Chicago Bears to go on the road and win consecutive games in the same stadium. That one per at Buffalo Bills PR on Twitter. Dell, what are your thoughts about the Week 2 victory over the Giants?
Well, I don't know about you, but the 2006 Bears went to the Super Bowl, so I guess we should all start, planning our trips now, right?
Well, you mentioned that. I know that's tongue-in-cheek, but Trey Wingo did point out on Twitter that the Bills became the fourth team to beat the Jets and Giants in consecutive weeks on the road, and history says that they're going to the playoffs because the last 3 teams to beat the Jets and Giants in consecutive weeks all made the playoffs. So maybe you're onto something there.
Who knows? Maybe. It's that's such a man. They could tell a story out of anything, can't they? When it comes to stats and everything.
With stats and with things that have happened, yeah, just anything that's happened. Like if it's a game storyline or anything, they can always there's some sort of story that they could tell every single week. Oh,
for sure. And with 100 years now of the NFL, there is no shortage of data that you can use to put together whatever storyline you want. But all that said, 2-0, what a great way to start the season, and there's 2 road wins, so that's fantastic. I'm really happy with the way it's kind of shaken out so far. I love how Josh Allen has really commanded this team. He's made some mistakes, especially that first half against the Jets. Made some mistakes. He's not been perfect, but man, he's been pretty good when it counts.
Well, the one thing too about Josh Allen that's been really fun to watch these last 2 weeks, especially last week as well, is that going into our 3 big things this week, it really does look like the Cowboys' game plan in Week 1 was copied by the Buffalo Bills in Week 2. In Week 1, the Giants secondary really struggled to stop Dak Prescott, and it looks like, Week 1, Buffalo, we saw that they started 18 straight passes against the Jets. On Sunday, Josh Allen picked up where Dak Prescott left off against that Giants defense. 19 of 30 passes completed, 253 yards and a touchdown. Allen also ran 7 times for 21 yards and a touchdown. Now, Dell, there's a bevy of stuff here that I have, most of which from Bills PR. They do such a fantastic job over there on Twitter. Let me just run down these stats here for you for Josh Allen. He topped 250 yards passing in back-to-back games, the first Bill to do so since Tyrod Taylor in 2015. He ran for a touchdown in 3 straight games, making him the first Bill since LaShawn McCoy in 2016 to do so. Matthew Berry points out that Josh Allen's rushing touchdown was a 10th of his career. No other quarterback has more than 6 since the beginning of last year. These last 3 from the Buffalo Bills PR team as well. Josh Allen is the 3rd NFL quarterback since at least 1950 to run for 10-plus touchdowns in his first 14 career starts, joining Cam Newton and Johnny Lujak. Josh Allen now has passed for a touchdown and rushed for a touchdown in 3 straight games, making him the first NFL player since Cam Newton to do that in 2013. And this last mind-boggling stat for you, Dell, with 206 passing yards on the day, Josh Allen has surpassed 200-plus yards passing in 7 consecutive games, the longest streak by a Bills quarterback since Jim Kelly in 1992. And that was a long time ago, so that tells you how bad it's been behind center for the Buffalo Bills for 2 decades now.
Yeah, it does. It does. But, we I was just saying a moment ago how you can make stats tell you any story. This story kind of tells itself.
Absolutely.
Josh Allen is a talent under center that the Bills have not had in a while. And if you can't tell, I'm really excited about it. And I think I'm probably on the record, if you go back in an old podcast, when we were doing this a couple of years ago, like I wasn't like super thrilled with the pick, along with many other people. But I am happy to be proven wrong with just the way that it's been developed over the past 2 seasons. So, let's go.
Well, obviously, I know you. Obviously, people know that you weren't on last week, so we didn't have the chance to talk about Josh Allen too much so far. But really, Josh Allen, the thing about him, the one thing I heard, I can't remember who said it, but essentially, he's gone from being one of the worst quarterbacks in the league statistically, completion percentage wise, things like that, to now being more average. And that small step can make a big difference for this Buffalo Bills team, because instead of the Buffalo Bills defense needing to pick up the slack the first 2 weeks, Josh Allen's been able to do some of the dirty work and get points on the board, so that way the defense can just focus on their job and not have to focus on trying to make, spectacular plays every single time they're out there to stop a team from scoring. They go out and do their job. Josh Allen of the Bills offense goes out and does their job, and things seem to be working well so far through 2 games.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this defense is so good. You really just need a quarterback who's not going to get in the way, an offense that isn't going to hold you back. And you look at how that team was able to hang in there with the Jets in week 1. Just the defense really kept them in that game. And, not every quarterback is going to show up and light the league on fire like Patrick Mahomes has the past few seasons. But there's progress, and he's playing better. It feels like he's playing better than he did the previous week, almost every game. So as he continues to move forward and as the defense continues to be the defense that it is, I think that, Bills fans are in for not only an exciting season, but, maybe an exciting era is beginning.
Absolutely. And the Bills came out of the gates firing. I mean, we saw Saquon Barkley, the opening drive for the Giants, kind of blow the roof off of it real quick and kind of made things feel a little uncomfortable. You thought to yourself, okay, it might be a long day. But after that first drive, I mean, yeah, Saquon Barkley did end up with 107 yards and a touchdown and 18 carries, but 50 of those yards, a little under 50 of those yards and a touchdown, and that touchdown came on the first drive of the game. Coming into the game, Saquon Barkley averaged 10.9 yards per carry in the week 1 loss to the Cowboys. So clearly Buffalo had to pay attention to Saquon Barkley. And after the first drive, they calmed down. They focused on stopping him, gang tackling, and making sure that they could really have Eli Manning beat them, if anything else. And going back to Josh Allen real quick, Bell, some of the things that he did were really great and have been great. Like, they made a point to get wide receivers involved. They had 7 receptions in the first quarter by 7 different wide receivers. There was a play where he overthrew John Brown, but John Brown, he was able to recognize that Brown had beaten the defense and he launched one deep. Obviously have to work on stuff like that. But offensively, I mean, the only real bad thing that was kind of disheartening was the Devin Singletary hamstring injury, which we don't know much about yet, and the penalties and the sometimes they had the inability to protect Josh Allen, which was a little scary, but Josh Allen seems to be making the right decisions at the right time. I know there's another thing too that I really liked from the offensive line, and it's something we saw again was things like Quentin Spain, watching him. I believe I have it written down here. It was 7:56 remaining in the game. He blew up a big 20-yard touchdown or 20-yard run to the New York Giants 3, all because of a Quentin Spain big block that opened a hole and allowed things to progress from there. So the offensive line, much better. Again, we saw the Cody Ford penalty, which I'm not sure about you, Del. I like the penalty, the thought behind it, because obviously, I'm protecting my quarterback. You're not going to hit my guy and get away with it. But also, you have to have the knowledge to think to yourself, hey, probably not a good idea or good time to take a penalty like this. So it's kind of a catch-22.
Yeah, absolutely. But it really does show how this team is put together. It is a family. These aren't guys that are just there for the money. There's a team family atmosphere, and the Bills are very quick to point that out. So when you see things like that, like the quarterback getting manhandled, like nobody's just letting that happen. And so, yeah, it kind of sucks. But, Cody Ford is going to be around for a long time. Josh Allen's going to be around for a long time. if everything progresses as it is right now. So, stick up for each other, build that relationship. I think it's great. And obviously the penalty stuck, but sometimes, like you said, it's a catch-22.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things where it was definitely very much split down the middle on Twitter. You saw some people that were very happy, some people that were very mad, and some people that just didn't care. And I tweeted out almost immediately. I was like, that you can't do that. That's a stupid penalty to take. But then again, I thought about it seconds later and went, but I understand the logic behind it, because obviously you don't want that stuff happening. And I'm just looking right now, actually, because Sal Capaccio tweeted out that through week 2, look at these stats, Dell. Through week 2, the Buffalo Bills offense, 9th in yards per game, 13th in yards per play, 9th in rush yards per game, 12th in rush yards per play, 8th in pass yards per game, and 13th in pass yards per play. Defensively, they're 6th in yards per game, 3rd in yards per play, 10th in rush yards per game, 20th in rush yards per play, 6th in pass yards allowed per game, and 1st in pass yards allowed per play. So that defense is as good as we expected it to be, and the offense is exactly where it needs to be. I mean, we've talked about it in the offseason. If the Buffalo Bills offense is middle of the road, mediocre, they should be fine. They should play well. They should play well enough to win a few games, more than they expected to. And so far, I mean, 2-0 going into a game, which we'll talk about here in a minute, that they look good, and they've looked good. They've looked very, very, very confident in the ability to adjust on the fly. Very good as well.
Yeah, they absolutely have. You talk about that first drive a few minutes ago with Saquon Barkley, and then how it just kind of like that was it. And I don't know if that's because it's probably a bit of both. But I don't know if that's because the Bills' defense started showing the Giants' offense different looks, so they decided they couldn't take advantage of whatever inefficiencies they saw in that first drive, or if it's just, Pat Shurmur doesn't know how to run an offense. So, I don't know, but they've definitely done a pretty good job of showing that they're for real, and it's a lot of fun to watch.
Another thing to point out, too, real quick, that Sal just tweeted, it was that the Bills are 11th in points per game, 22.5, and they are 5th in points against per game at 15. That 22.5 may not do it every week, but that should be able, especially with the defense only allowing 15 points a game through 2 weeks, they really should be able to push and win more often than not. I don't want to get too far down the road and start talking, potential playoff runs and stuff like that, but if you look at how the AFC is currently shaking out, things are looking so far so good for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, the Bills are a pretty balanced team right now in terms of, the offense versus defense, in my opinion. Obviously, the defense, I think, is better, at a talent level than the offense, per se. I mean, it just kind of shows how it bears out. But 22 points. Is that what you said it was? 22 points.
22 and a half.
Right
yeah.
22 and a half points. That's not going to win the average team. It's not going to win a game for you in the NFL more often than not. Normally, you want your team to score at least 30, but this defense is something else. Now, the offense needs to give the defense some breaks here and there. It's going to need to, a few games this season where they score more than 22 points. They're going to need that in a couple weeks against the Patriots. That's for sure. But I do like the way that they're currently set up, the way they're currently configured, and they should win some games this year. I think they are a legitimate playoff contender based on at least the early returns.
Now, before we move on to the third of our three big things this week, the one thing I do want to point out, Dale, that was kind of troublesome throughout the game was how fast the Bills started in the first 2 quarters. They come out in the third quarter and they completely fall flat. There's no push, there's no drive. It's just kind of going through the motions, and it almost bit them in the ass a little because, as time went on, the Giants started to get more and more forward momentum. Thankfully, the Bills defense was able to stand up and do their thing and kind of bail the offense out. But the fact that the offense came out flat in the second half is certainly troublesome and something to watch, because against a team like you mentioned, the New England Patriots, you can't let that stuff happen. I mean, because if you go flat for a quarter or two, that could be the difference in a game.
Yeah, you cannot rest on your laurels. You cannot be like, okay, we're up by a couple scores. Let's take the foot off the gas. that's one thing that you do not see Bill Belichick, you do not see his team ever do, is take their foot off the gas. That was probably my main pain point coming out of last week's game, was just like you said, how flat they were at the third. And it's like, so they took their foot off the gas, they let the Giants like hang around, and then
I think we might have lost
from the jump.
I was going to say, I thought we lost you there for a second. Another thing too, I want to point out real fast. I know I'm looking at my notes here as we're chatting. It's a small, minute thing, not a big deal, but the Buffalo Bills went up 21-7. They went in the half with a 2-touchdown lead. They had the ball back with 47 seconds and 2 timeouts, and decided instead to just kneel it and go into the half. I'm not a fan of that. I don't know. Again, that feels kind of like the kind of just, hey, we've got a lead, whatever, no big deal. But again, it's a little strange.
Yeah, I'm not going to expect differently at this point. I mean, we do, and that isn't meant as no disrespect, but we do have a pretty traditionally minded, defensive-minded coach. They're up by 2 scores, and they're happy with that. Obviously, I want them to put their foot on the gas, but maybe for whatever reason they weren't feeling confident. They're just being a little overcautious and weren't really crazy about the idea of giving the Giants an opportunity to be just down by a score. But if the Bills received the ball after the second half, it would have been nice. Even if you just got in field goal range, it would have been nice to get a few extra points there going into that.
It never hurts to score points, and obviously we know that. But the one thing I want to mention, like I said before, we move on to the look ahead, is our weekly Gore watch. Frank Gore rolled into week 2, ranked 4th all time in the NFL history with 14,768 rushing yards. Barry Sanders, as you know from last week's podcast, ranked 3rd all time with 15,269 rushing yards. Heading into week 2, Gore was 501 yards behind Sanders. And in week 2, Gore chipped away at that deficit. 19 rushes for 68 yards and a touchdown. Heading into week 3 against the Cincinnati Bengals, Frank Gore now 14,836 yards in his career. That's 433 behind Barry Sanders for 3rd all time. So again, something fun we get to keep an eye on with Frank Gore in the backfield this season. Now, our look ahead, Dal, brought to you by 26 Shirts. Hey, that's you. So guess what, Dal? Give us a shout. Let us know what's going on with 26 Shirts. With the releases out now and what might be coming out, give us a shout. Let us know what's up with 26 Shirts.
Yeah, so we're doing a design right now. We worked with Reid to do a design that, honors the comeback game from many, many moons ago, the famous 41-38 game, which they came back and beat Houston. So it's pretty cool. We're doing a shirt with him. He modeled it for us. It benefits his foundation, which is associated with the Boys and Girls Clubs of America. So we're happy to help in that regard. We kind of looked ahead a little bit last week. We were looking past the Giants a little bit. We prepped a design that was ready to go just in case they happened to beat the Giants. Because the Mafia runs New York, we thought that'd be a fun design, and so that's a special edition we're offering right now. And Chris Robinson, that also benefits the Andre Reid Foundation. And then Chris Robinson, one of the freelance artists that we've had the pleasure of working with a bunch of times over the years, hit me up with a design over the weekend that he thought would be fun. I think he was right. So we released that today, and it's a few weeks ahead of time, but we want people to be able to order it and have it in time for the game against Tennessee, where it says forward lateral, and it says the miracle was a lie. So it's a funny little illustration. It's a cute, cool design that he put together, and that benefits Home Space Corporation, which is a local charity here in Western New York that helps young mothers who are in need of some help, young single mothers. So it's pretty cool that we're able to do that, and it's awesome when artists like Chris reach out to us with their ideas, and we're able to give them an outlet to not only share the design so people can love it as well, but can also help a local need.
Absolutely. And to point out, too, 26shirts.com, at 26shirts on Twitter and Instagram, and also facebook.com/26shirts. Heading into week 3, Dale, the Buffalo Bills come home for the first time in the 2019 regular season to host the Cincinnati Bengals. What's it going to be like Friday, Saturday, Sunday at New Era Field and in the tailgate lots and just the overall atmosphere in Orchard Park with the Buffalo Bills 2-0 heading potentially, I don't want to overlook the Cincinnati Bengals, but Dell, the Bengals are allowing an average of 402 yards per game in the first two games, as well as 31 points per game. So, safe to say the Bills have a very good shot at rolling to 3-0. What's it going to be like this weekend in Buffalo?
I think that's the most obvious question that anybody could ever answer. I think it's going to be crazy. I am looking forward to that game. I can't wait to be there. The stadium is going to be nuts. If this were any other game on the schedule, I'd be afraid that it's almost a bit of a trap game, just because of the confidence they have coming out of the past two games. That, looking ahead at New England, this next game after this one. But it's a home opener, and so I think that kind of like pumps the brakes a little bit and allows the players and the team to focus a little bit more on the task at head. And I think it's going to be nuts. And I really like the Bills in this one. Captain Obvious over here. But I think the offense just needs to keep their foot on the gas. Andy Dalton is still Andy Dalton. Doesn't really, in many fans' hearts doesn't really strike fear, but he's shown what he can do. And he's got Tyler Boyd, and I don't know if AJ Green is AJ Green back yet. I thought he was out for several weeks.
I think he's still out. I think John Ross is. I was actually. I know It's fantasy, no one cares about it, but I looked to pick up John Ross, and they said, "Well, this might be the last week he's the starter," and I'm like, So they may miss AJ Green this week.
All right. Well, that only works to the Bills' advantage. So it's going to be loud in that place for the Bengals offense, and I just think of that Colts game a few years back. I think it was Rex Ryan's first home game, home opener. I just remember how loud it was to open the 2015 season. I think it's going to be like that this week, probably even more so. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm not bringing earplugs. I'm going to bring enjoy the full experience, but it's going to be loud.
I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm actually going to be in Hawaii on Sunday watching the game from different. I guess. I don't really know how to explain it. I forgot words. What are words? How is English? From a different perspective, that's the word I was looking for. We'll be at I believe Taps and Apps out in Honolulu, so that'll be pretty cool. Nice. It's going to be very, very strange to wake up at 7:00 in the morning to watch football, but I guess I can adapt.
Yeah, you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
And hopefully, I'm going to bring my stuff with me. Hopefully, we can get a Trust the Podcast in next week while I am on vacation. I'm looking forward to getting that in. But the Buffalo Bills again versus Cincinnati Bengals on Sunday at New Era Field for the first time in the 2019 regular season. Should be a great time. I mean, we both, I guess, not surprisingly, are going with the Bills. And we'll be back next week to talk more, and hopefully we'll be looking at a 3-0 Buffalo Bills team.
Let's go.
Absolutely. As always, Dell. I am Ryan Wolfe at WolfeBLTD. Dell is at Dell Reid on Twitter. We are Trust the Podcast. And as always, go Bills.
Go Bills.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Do you like sports, interactive polls, friendly banter from two guys that probably shouldn't even be on the microphone doing this stuff anyways? Well, if you do, then you're in luck. Us two knuckleheads, Brandon and myself, comprise the Listen In Podcast. That's right, Listen In, the podcast. We're talking sports, we're talking news, we're talking topical things, we're talking all sorts of things, my babies. And you are all invited to listen in right here on the Gear Radio Network.